Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. In today's episode, we've got multiple stories on a variety of topics, including Denny Hamlin sharing some insider secrets on how drivers could potentially beat him in the future, but it comes with a warning. Why one top Joe Gibbs Racing official wants it to rain this weekend at Indianapolis. Some interesting news that came out yesterday on how the $1 million for the in-season bracket challenge isn't going to who we thought it was going to. And an interesting conversation I heard yesterday on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio about the playoff format that included Larry McReynolds throwing some shade at Mark Martin. And we'll wrap up with this week's By the Numbers segment. However, before we start crunching those numbers, I want to go back to Denny Hamlin's Actions Detrimental podcast on Monday when he was talking about winning the race at Dover, and then he was asked about what could have been done at the end by his JGR teammate Chase Briscoe to prevent him from winning the race on that final restart. Take a listen.
Yeah, he almost cleared you off of turn two.
I just held the gas down as hard as I could and just hoped at that point he stayed in the bottom line and didn't chase us up the track.
He really emphasized that he wanted to race you cleanly. What could he have done to put the nail in the coffin for you?
Forced me to lift off of turn two. I would have probably taken him with me. This is a public service announcement to anyone that thinks that they're going to do that. I'm just going to hold the gas down, bounce off the wall, and take you out with me.
So Hamlin gives his competition advice on what they could do to prevent him from taking the lead in the future. But it comes with a caveat that if they opt to choose that route, it would basically cost Hamlin and that particular driver the win. And who knows what other cars it might take out. Hearing him say that, though, it reminded me of several examples since the Gen 7 car debuted in 2022 of Hamlin pulling off a similar type of move, including Pocono with Kyle Larson in 2023 and a year earlier at Texas, when, if you'll recall, William Byron responded by spinning the number 11 car under caution. Moving on from Denny Hamlin, but sticking with Joe Gibbs Racing. I was listening to SiriusXM NASCAR Radio yesterday morning when competition director Chris Gabehart made an appearance on the channel and talked about a variety of topics, including Hamlin's success this season and how he's happy to see it happen, what it's been like for him serving as a resource for Tyler Allen and guiding Ty Gibbs and the number 54 team, and then he focused forward and talked about this upcoming weekend at Indianapolis.
But it does give you the opportunity to hone your car in a little bit better, if you might struggle to come off the truck with the speed that you think you need. You get a shot to kind of reset, so to speak, before you have to put it in tech. So me personally, because of that, I would honestly rather it rain till Sunday. I feel one of our strengths as a company is being able to get off the truck and hit it right. We just were fortunate enough to do that at Dover, versus letting some teams that might miss it get a 50-minute practice session and a reset to try to catch up. So, that may be an unorthodox answer, but to me, I would just assume it rained clear to Sunday.
I think that's really interesting to hear because it just goes to show you how structured these bigger teams are with their processes and their notebooks, and how they go into each weekend carrying a ton of confidence with their setups, just based on all of those resources that they have available to them to get the cars right where they want them when they come off the hauler. Gabehart, funny enough, also mentioned how there is a chance of rain this weekend at Indy. Of course there is, otherwise it wouldn't be a NASCAR race weekend. Moving on to our next story and continuing with the JGR theme, sort of. This weekend at Indianapolis is the finals of the in-season bracket challenge where JGR's Ty Gibbs is facing Colleague Racing's Ty Dillon for the $1 million. For at least a year, and since this tournament was announced, fans have thought that the driver that wins the bracket challenge wins the $1 million. Why did they think that? I present to you two examples.
Played out in a single elimination bracket style competition with the winning driver taking home a $1 million prize.
Other brackets, and if they get the whole thing right, they get the big check too. Just like mine when I win this thing.
So that was Kim Kuhn when the tournament was announced last year, and then Josh Berry in a recent promotion before the in-season challenge started. Both of them on NASCAR's YouTube channel. Naturally, when Berry says, just like mine when I win this thing, you assume that the I would be Josh Berry, not the number 21 Wood Brothers team. Well, yesterday news came out that is in fact going to be the case, that it's not going to be the drivers who received the $1 million, but the owner. According to Bob Pockrass, NASCAR said that was the intent all along, for the owners to receive the prize money, and they're allowed to divvy it up however they see fit, or whatever is in the contract for the respective driver. But if that's the case, why did we get all of this messaging since the very beginning and its announcement, as I showed you with Kim Kuhn, all the way up until this past weekend, when Ty Dillon said this.
For me, it means a lot, and I don't want it to end, so that's another little motivating factor, and $1 million would go a long way. I got 3 babies at home, so we got some stuff going on and futures to plan.
It certainly sounds like he was expecting that million for himself if he wins it. Listen, I get it. Whatever driver wins, they're still going to get a good chunk of change. But the point is, fans had been led to believe all along that it was the driver winning it. It just feels like this latest news that the fans, and who knows, maybe even the drivers, have been misled by the sanctioning body's messaging, and that takes away some of the excitement. And our final news item for the day came yesterday in a conversation on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio during the on-track show with Larry McReynolds and Danielle Trotta. A caller called in to talk about a completely separate topic and then brought up the playoffs and how he wished it would go back to the old format. And then this exchange happened.
Yeah, just go back to old school. Whoever's got the most points is the champion.
Okay, Chris. I mean, I respect you. Appreciate you, Carl.
Whoever's driven the best throughout the year.
Our system now rewards winning and consistency.
Consistency. Rewards both. And while we want to go back to a system
Chris,
where somebody rolls into the last race of the year and either A, they've already sewed up the championship, or they just have to finish 18th or better, you can wish for that. I think that ship has sailed and she's not coming back.
To Rick and Michigan's point, they have these committees now where drivers sit in, and I'm not going to mention the driver that's on the playoff committee that I have heard is screaming loudly to go back to that system, and I pray to God everyone in NASCAR inside that room.
I bet it's a driver that's not won a championship. Would I be
Correct.
right on that? Bingo.
Correct.
You got a winner, Johnny.
Let's keep moving forward, not backward.
So that was what was said on the radio. A short time later on X, a fan posted this. Hey Mark, SiriusXM Channel 90 threw shade on you without saying your name, but I knew they were talking about you in regards to wanting the old point system back. Larry McReynolds referred to you simply as, quote, a driver who has never won a championship, end quote. I was disgusted by that. The fan then included the clip that I just played. Martin responded to that initial fan's post and said this. They want a system that is different than what the majority of NASCAR Cup fans want. I just want the majority of fans to get what they want. A short time later, Danielle Trotta responded to the fan's original post and said this. Mark, you know I love you, but what we got is a whole lot better than what we used to do. We need a playoff, we need eliminations, we need to reward winning and consistency. This format does it all and is highly entertaining. To which Martin simply responded back by saying, no, we don't, in all caps. If you'll recall, it was just last month I talked about Martin and this very subject, including the poll he had on X that showed 60% of the respondents preferred a classic 36 race season, while 23% wanted a 10-race chase. At the time, I joined the poll party and asked basically the same question on the channel. Of the 700 plus responses, the results were similar, with 67% preferring a classic 36 race season, while 21% preferred a modified playoff. The debate of the playoffs versus the old point system rages on. Sticking with numbers, and now it's time for our By the Numbers segment. And I want to continue with the theme of the old point system. And the first graphic I'm going to show you comes from my buddy Joel Steuben, which, just a quick reminder, can be found on Stube.com. It's a fun little graphic he's done for a while now, but I haven't used, and that's his Mario Kart point system, which is A, fun, and B, interesting to see how it shakes out because it's similar to what the old point system might look like. As you can see, Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell are tied at the top, and they are followed by Denny Hamlin, William Byron, and Chase Elliott. Chase Briscoe slots in 6th, and Ryan Blaney is the first car to break the JGR HMS stranglehold at the top. Alex Bowman, Ross Chastain, and Tyler Reddick round out the top 10. I'm really interested to see if you guys like this chart, because if you do, I'll start including it in future segments. Now, let's move on to the traditional areas we cover every week, starting with our last 5 races analysis. Chase Elliott holds down the top spot for a 3rd consecutive week with an impressive average finishing position of 6.2. I know you number 9 fans are probably not happy with this and think it could be even better had it not been for that late 2-tire stop at Dover. But despite that Alan Gustafson pit call, the 2020 champion has been really strong in his last 5 with 4 finishes inside the top 6. We've had a swap in 2nd and 3rd place between Ty Gibbs and Alex Bowman. The 22-year-old comes in with an AFP of 8.4, and that includes his last 3 finishes all being inside the top 7. Meanwhile, Bowman is 3rd and has 3 top 10 results of his own in his last 5. Chris Buescher is fourth for a second week in a row and an AFP of 11.2 and has 3 top 10s in there as well. Tyler Reddick comes in with an AFP of 11.4 and continues the trend with 3 top 10s in his last 5. Rounding out the top 10 are Denny Hamlin, Ryan Preece, Chase Briscoe, Kyle Busch, who despite Richard Childress' post-race comments, has 3 finishes inside the top 11 in his last 3 races, and Brad Keselowski, who has an AFP of 13.8 with 3 top 10s of his own. Going down to the bottom of our graphic, and you can see Ross Chastain has struggled as of late and is tied with Cole Custer with an average finishing position of 25.2, with 4 of his last 5 finishes being 24th or worse. But look who's second from the bottom. William Byron has struggled mightily over his last 5 races with a single top 10 at Sonoma and all the rest of his finishes 27th or worse. Ouch. We'll move on to our race progression graph, starting with our top 5 finishers. And like our Mario Kart's point standings, it's very JGR HMS heavy with all 5 cars in the top 5 coming from those 2 teams. But since we just talked about Byron, let's look at the HMS cars on Sunday at Dover. And as we saw with our top 5, there were a couple of Byron's teammates in there. Chase Elliott finished just outside the top 5, and look at that number 24 team. Was actually having a good day, but that late accident with Christopher Bell and Noah Gragson spoiled it. JGR's numbers include those 3 drivers who we already saw in the top 5, and then it has the aforementioned Bell, including his 2 spins on the day, which are clearly indicated in here. Richard Childress wasn't happy after the race, but it wasn't because his cars finished terribly at the Monster Mile. Kyle Busch finished 11th, while Austin Dillon finished 15th. And finally, I talked in Monday's race recap video how there were no Fords running inside the top 10 for most of the day. This graphic of Penske and Wood Brothers clearly shows that, and Ryan Blaney was the only one to manage a top 10 out of the 4 cars. Which takes us to our last segment for the day, and that's the biggest movers. Let's start with those who were trending in the wrong direction with Miles the Monster. And Willie B was the biggest loser on the day, dropping 27 points from 5th to 32nd. Coming in second was Shane Van Gisbergen, who suffered a punctured tire early in the first stage and dropped to the back almost immediately, losing 24 spots for the day. The others losing big on Sunday at Dover were AJ Allmendinger, Christopher Bell, and Ross Chastain. Conversely, those going the right direction and moving up were, interestingly enough, Ryan Blaney. The Fords may have struggled, but the 2023 champion gained the most spots on the day, picking up 23 positions. Right behind him was Kyle Larson gaining 21, while Bubba Wallace picked up 15. Alex Bowman gained 13, and race winner Denny Hamlin gained 12 spots on the day. All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. I want to hear your thoughts. First, I want to hear what you guys think now that you know that the owners will receive the $1 million prize for the in-season challenge versus the driver. Does that diminish its excitement for you? Second, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about the comments of Larry McReynolds and Danielle Trotta about the playoff format and Mark Martin's response. And finally, let me know what you thought about this week's By the Numbers segment, and if you'd like to see me include the Mario Kart point system in future episodes. Thanks again for checking out today's episode and supporting the channel. I really and truly appreciate it, and hope you have a great rest of your day.